On April 24, 2025, the serene beauty of Pahalgam, a picturesque town nestled in the Himalayas, was shattered by a horrific act of terror. Militants stormed a local market, unleashing a barrage of gunfire and spreading chaos and fear. The idyllic tourist destination transformed into a scene of carnage, leaving behind a trail of blood and shattered lives. The death toll rose to a grim figure of 26, with scores injured, many critically. The immediate aftermath was chaos and despair. First responders rushed to the scene, tending to the wounded and transporting them to nearby hospitals, ill-equipped to handle the scale of the disaster. The attack sent shockwaves throughout India, evoking painful memories of past acts of terrorism that have plagued the nation. The name Pahalgam, once synonymous with tranquility and natural beauty, became etched in the collective memory as a symbol of vulnerability and loss. As investigations began, authorities quickly identified the perpetrators as members of the Resistant Front, a known terrorist organization with ties to Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba. This group, infamous for its history of violence, claimed responsibility for the attack, further inflaming tensions between the two nuclear-armed neighbors. The attack on Pahalgam was not just an assault on innocent lives. It was a calculated act of aggression aimed at disrupting the fragile peace in the region. The international community condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms, offering condolences to the victims' families and expressing solidarity with India in its fight against terrorism. However, the attack on Pahalgam was more than just another terrorist incident. It was a stark reminder of the deep-rooted animosity between India and Pakistan, a conflict with global implications. The world watched with bated breath, fearing the potential for escalation and the devastating consequences that would ensue. India reacted to the Pahalgam attack with a decisive and multifaceted diplomatic offensive. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, visibly shaken and angered by the carnage, addressed the nation, vowing to hunt down the perpetrators and hold them accountable for their actions. His words, laced with grief and determination, resonated throughout the country, galvanizing public support for a strong response. "We will not rest," he declared, "until justice is served." One of India's first moves was to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty, a landmark agreement signed in 1960 that governs the sharing of water resources between the two countries. This unprecedented step, while primarily symbolic, sent a clear message that India was willing to leverage its control over the Indus River system, a lifeline for Pakistan's agriculture, to exert pressure. The move was met with concern from international observers, who feared it could further escalate tensions and potentially lead to a humanitarian crisis in the region. India also took the drastic step of closing the Wagah-Atari border, the only land crossing between the two nations and a vital trade route. This closure brought bilateral trade to a standstill, impacting businesses and economies on both sides. The move, while intended to isolate Pakistan diplomatically and economically, also served as a powerful symbol of the fractured relationship between the two countries. Adding to these measures, India expelled Pakistani diplomats and military attachés, further escalating the diplomatic standoff. This expulsion, a clear signal of India's displeasure, effectively severed diplomatic channels, making communication and de-escalation all the more challenging. The international community watched with growing concern as the situation continued to deteriorate. In the wake of the Pahalgam attack, India's political landscape, often characterized by fractious debates and ideological divides, witnessed a rare display of unity. Prime Minister Modi, recognizing the need for a cohesive response, convened an all-party meeting, bringing together leaders from across the political spectrum to discuss the situation and formulate a unified strategy. This demonstration of unity sent a strong message to Pakistan and the international community that India stood united in the face of terrorism. The meeting, held in a somber atmosphere, saw leaders setting aside their political differences to condemn the attack and express solidarity with the victims. Opposition parties, while critical of the government's handling of the security situation, pledged their unwavering support for any measures taken to protect the nation and bring the perpetrators to justice. The message was clear. This was not the time for political point scoring, but for national unity. Beyond the closed doors of the meeting room, the Indian public echoed this sentiment. Candlelight vigils were held in cities and towns across the country, with citizens expressing their grief and solidarity with the victims and their families. Social media platforms were flooded with messages of condolences, anger, and calls for justice. The attack on Pahalgam had struck a chord with the Indian psyche, rekindling the trauma of past attacks and uniting the nation in grief and resolve. Pakistan responded to India's accusations and actions with a mix of defiance and countermeasures, further escalating the already tense standoff. The Pakistani government vehemently denied any involvement in the Pahalgam attack, dismissing India's claims as baseless allegations and propaganda. Pakistan's foreign minister, in a strongly worded statement, accused India of using the attack as a pretext to further its own agenda in the region. In a move mirroring India's expulsion of diplomats, Pakistan reciprocated by expelling Indian diplomats and recalling its High Commissioner from New Delhi. This tit-for-tat diplomacy, while predictable, did little to ease the tensions and instead highlighted the deep mistrust and animosity between the two nations. The diplomatic channels already strained were now effectively closed, making communication and de-escalation even more challenging. Pakistan also closed its airspace to Indian airlines, disrupting air travel between the two countries and impacting thousands of passengers. This move, while presented as a reciprocal measure, further isolated Pakistan internationally and had economic repercussions for both nations. The airspace closure, a common tactic in such standoffs, underscored the breakdown of communication and the escalating nature of the conflict.